In this episode of our series, Voices for Change, Democracy and Climate Action, we look at why youth matter with Sophia Kianni, founder and president of Climate Cardinals. Sophia, thanks so much for joining us. First, tell us a little bit about your organization. What does it do?
Yeah, of course. I am the founder and president of Climate Cardinals. So we work to increase access to climate education, particularly among young people and non-English populations.
What prompted you to do this work, and what's the sort of connection that you see between climate activism, climate action, information, and democracy?
Yeah, 100%. So I was really inspired to do this work because of my Iranian background. So growing up, I would visit Iran over the summers, and I was struck by how horrible air pollution there was. I learned that temperatures in the Middle East were rising more than twice the global average. And despite that, I read a study that basically said less than 5% of Iranian university students could properly explain the greenhouse gas effect. And so there was a very low level of climate literacy in Iran, including among my relatives, despite the fact that they were worst impacted. And I ended up learning that it was because of a lack of resources available in Farsi was one of the reasons. And so it inspired me to begin translating climate resources into Farsi for my relatives, and was the initial inspiration for me starting Climate Cardinals with the goal of ensuring everyone everywhere could access climate education through translating into over 100 languages.
So it was literally that people were kind of being left out of the conversation. It wasn't that the world wasn't talking about climate, it just wasn't filtering down to a population of people who actually need the information.
Exactly. So the statistics are startling. Less than 20% of the world speaks English, and yet over 80 or 90% of scientific literature about climate change is only available in English. So the people who are being worst impacted by these conversations often are left out of them. And that's really what we sought out to solve with Climate Cardinals. And kind of as a byproduct of that, we started to see just how incredibly energized and enthusiastic young people were about working on climate issues, which essentially evolved into now our really signature Youth Fellows program, where we've had over 250 young people come through Climate Cardinals and work on workflows from international relations to communications, all oriented around really increasing access to climate education and climate resources.
So how does that translate? When someone gets informed about a topic, are they more likely to vote? Are they more likely to become active in their communities?
Education is really the first step to empowering people to take action on climate change. It's hard to get involved in a fight when you don't have the resources. And so with Climate Cardinals, we essentially empower people with the knowledge to better understand how climate change is impacting their local communities. And as a result of that, kind of what they can do, how they can advocate to get involved, and really, like you said, emphasizing that connection between climate change and the need for systemic action. So making people understand the correlation between if you're voting for a candidate who believes in climate change, is going to pass climate legislation, that as an individual, in addition to talking about climate change, is one of the most important, impactful things you can do.
So, a lot of people have a tendency to say, God, federal politics is just so removed from me. Climate is such a global concern. How do you see, especially young people, personalize and localize their action when they actually get information, especially if it's in their own language?
Yeah, I think that it really starts with highlighting that the reality is that most of climate change is being caused by fossil fuel companies and fossil fuel emissions, and looking at and stacking my individual emissions or your individual emissions compared to the 100 companies that are responsible for the majority of emissions, you start to understand how we need to use local action as a catalyst to advocate for broader change. And so understanding that and having our volunteers understand that really informs that this community-oriented action is viewed through the lens of incentivizing systemic change, whether it be through corporate action, corporate change, or community governance, and then ultimately national governance change.
So how do you inspire young people to connect that dot between their passion for climate change, I guess in the positive direction, to try to do something about climate change, versus just feeling maybe disconnected from democracy? How do you connect the dots between getting them informed and then also getting them involved?
Yeah, I mean, I think it really boils down to the incredible work that our youth fellows are doing. So through Climate Cardinals, we've essentially offered hundreds of young people the opportunity to manage teams and budgets, all oriented around either local or national projects. So two examples of that come to mind are we had a volunteer who was like a senior at Berkeley who worked with us over the summer, and she was able to manage a budget to create a website that basically hosts hundreds of volunteer opportunities from around the country, from different climate organizations. So she was able to see that with a small budget and managing a team of volunteers, she was able to create an entire website in just a few months. And then similarly, we had another youth volunteer who was able to generate over 40,000 pre-signups for an ambassador program that she created, that she recruited a team of volunteers to create graphics and to write content for, that has now gone out to tens of thousands of people as part of our newsletter. And so empowering these young people with the resources, with capacity building, with mentorship, and then taking their ideas from 0 to 1. I mean, I think it's really hard to understand something if you can't see it. And so for them to be able to see and witness firsthand the impact that they're able to have when they have the proper resources and mentorship to really foster and facilitate that has allowed young people to understand from an early age this incredible opportunity they have to make an impact. And so Climate Cardinals really just works to foster the incredible enthusiasm and ideas that these young people are already coming in with.
Sophia Kianni, Climate Cardinals, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me.